Welcome to the URISA Excellence in GIS webinar series, ESIG. ESIG started in 1981. It recognises outstanding achievements by government agencies in the use of geospatial information technologies. The exemplary achievement is defined as the effective application of geospatial technologies and data that results in the improved government service delivery and increased benefits to the citizens. The award competition is international in nature and open to the public agencies at the local, regional, state, provincial, and federal levels. My name is Nicole Dogan, and I'm your moderator for today. I'm pleased to present a 2022 ESIG Distinguished Enterprise System winner, Plano Emergency Tactical Response Guide from Plano, Texas. As we learn about the Emergency Tactical Response Guide, I want to encourage you to enter your questions into the Q&A. If you hover over the Zoom window towards the bottom, you should be able to find it there. Then we will let Kristina address those questions throughout the presentation or at the end. Joining us from the city of Plano, we have Kristina Deitz. Kristina received her master's degree in geospatial surveying engineering from Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi in 2015. Throughout her college career, she had multiple internships and jobs ranging from environmental mapping to oil gas to a teaching assistant position. After graduating with her master's degree, she went on to work in the consulting realm for AECOM for over 5 years. She has since moved on to the municipal government sector and is currently a business intelligence GIS Analyst 3 with the City of Plano. Kristina initially gained her GISP certification in 2019 and is current with that certification. Thank you all for joining us today. I'll let Kristina take it away from here.
Thanks, Nicole. I appreciate the intro. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. Like Nicole mentioned, this is our Fire Tactical Response Guide solution using ArcGIS Online web apps. So our fire department is actually who brought this to us. They told us we have a need to have access to our data in real time. They were using old PDF maps. I'm not sure if some of y'all may have seen some of these giant books printed in their fire trucks, but it's basically, as you can see, an outline of the building with data on it for information such as Knox box, how to enter the building, elevators, where offices are located, suite numbers. All of this is pre-fire plans is what they call them, pre-plans. They have different names for them, but it's basically how they plan to attack the fire in an emergency situation or any other kind of information they get called out for. So they need all of this information as far in advance as they can. And as soon as we print these maps, we all know the data is outdated, right? Because it's continuously being updated. Things are continuously changing, especially on a citywide level, a countywide level. All of this is always changing and our paper maps become outdated immediately. So they came to us, they were like, hey, we have this problem, we need a solution. What can we do? And so we worked together with them to help kind of come up with a solution that showed their fire hydrants, their Knox boxes, everything I mentioned previously on an interactive map. So this is kind of where it came from. We know that seconds matter in an emergency, and we wanted to help them pre-plan as much as we can. So it actually started out with an ESRI solution that I can kind of get into. We have it linked, but they talked to ESRI and they gave them options. It looked at multiple factors such as, life safety, economic impact if something were to catastrophically happen, the building size, occupancy type. Is it something like a school, a business? Is it just residential, multifamily? Is it an apartment building? All of these factors had to go into assessing what kind of risk it is if something were to happen to that particular building. So these were another example of the original paper maps. This is where it started, right? This was an apartment building. It showed you the layout, where the gate codes were, but then to get the gate codes, you actually had to call dispatch. It wasn't, and sometimes dispatch didn't have that information, so dispatch had to call the apartment complex, and sometimes those numbers weren't up to date. So obviously this is all very slow, right? When you're in an emergency situation, and they wanted all of that information at the touch of their fingertips. They didn't want to have to call 20 people trying to get information, and otherwise they're just going to knock down a gate, right? And that apartment complex has to eat that economic impact as well as the fire damage and trying to get people out. It just slowed things down. So they were actually having, fire marshals had to update dispatch with contact information, and that's if the fire marshals updated the dispatch. So it was all very manually set up before. And so we tried to automate this process. And they previously, what they've done to keep these maps up to date, they assigned a different building every month, right? And it's part of their regulations to keep these up to date. I can't even remember the correct word, but it's to keep their accreditation through the fire department. So they have to update these on a regular basis. And so they assign a different building every month. And so our captain was just assigning these randomly, like, oh, this one needs updating, go update that one. He didn't have any recollection of, when it was last updated, when it should be updated, which ones have and haven't been looked at. So all of this was having to be done manually. Each station, each shift received a different building assignment. He was doing this in Excel, and there's over 3,500 buildings in Plano, and we're growing. Even today, I got an email from fire saying, hey, there's a new building. Could you put this in there so we can add data? So we did that. We've automated it for them so they don't have to use Excel anymore. They've added in delinquencies so that if they didn't get to their assignment that month, they can do it next month. And they can still make edits to the data outside of those assignments. The assignments are just for them to be able to regularly update the data and make sure they're staying on track to meet their accreditation goals of keeping this data up to date. So originally it was all, in the PDF format. So to get to where we are, we had to digitize the original data. There's no way around that. I know everybody wants the easy, how do we get that data? Well, you have to make the data, right? You have to digitize it. If it was all what they used to do is draw on a paper map, and we created that in a paper map. They were literally creating maps in Adobe. They were not using ESRI software, any kind of Google Maps, nothing. They were doing it in PDF Acrobat or however they were doing it. It was not using mapping software. And so they had to take that data. We got very lucky that I think our fire captain at the time was on light duty. And so they really bought into the process. He sat down, he learned how to map. He learned how to use ESRI and started just creating data. He would look at his paper map, say, oh, there's a key box here. Oh, there's a gate code here. Oh, this is the building. He sat down and learned GIS just so he could get that data loaded in there. And so now he's updating the data on himself. And then we have started automating the process to manage that data. When something was last looked at, how do it make the assignments we just talked about? And communicating those assignments to the chain of command, right? Because that's super important. The chain of command is very important to the fire department. The battalion chief wants to know what's going on with all of his fire guys below him so that he knows, hey, we're staying on track, we're meeting the accreditation requirements, we're looking at all of the buildings. And it's really cool to watch how the process has really grown even within the last year, because it's only been live for about a year now. And so we're in charge of communicating those assignments at the beginning of every month, tracking the progress using dashboards throughout the month, and creating a central location for them to access all of the apps. And we still have static maps just because sometimes we have to have a backup in case, for some reason we cannot get internet, especially on those trucks. So we make sure we have a paper map ready for them to utilize. So before I get into the apps, that kind of the automation that we did with Python script, we have hourly scripts, nightly scripts, weekly backups, just because I have deletion anxiety and all kinds of editing anxiety, especially when you don't know who may be editing that day or who edited it. If there's no backup to say, okay, that wasn't there, now it's there. And we can kind of track through editor tracking who created it. All of that's kind of managed with scripting, monthly assignments. So this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, making sure we're staying on track with keeping up to date what station, what ship, what battalion is all assigned to what building each month. I know that's kind of in the weeds, but it's super helpful that we have that script to kind of keep the guys on task, guys and gals on task to prioritize risk levels. We want to make sure we're looking at our maximum risk buildings, our large apartment buildings where we have thousands of people, or our large high rises. We don't have that many in Plano, but we have a couple. And we want to make sure we're staying on top of it and keeping all that data up to date, because at the end of the day, that's their data that they're using in the middle of an emergency. So they want, it is what they put into it, right? If they decide, oh, I'm just going to add the gate code and move on. Well, that's what they're going to do. And that's the data they have available. So we just try and keep them on track, and it is what they make it. I don't know. I think I get really excited about that. But so that's kind of the scripting process. And then the mapping part, we have developed 3 different web apps for accountability. We've got our editing. This is what they are using in the field. They've got their monthly assignment. They go out to that building they've been given, and they add all of the information around it that you saw on those paper maps, such as Knox boxes, fire suppression systems, gate codes, contact information, updated building or business names. All of that information gets put in editor. And then our script that runs hourly updates, okay, the editor looked at it. We need the coordinator to review and make sure everything makes sense. Did somebody make a typo? Did they maybe put an alphanumeric key symbol in a phone number? Like, obviously we want to make sure our data is clean and in good shape. So that's the role of the coordinators. And they have, named user logins. So we know who's approving things, who's editing, and we can backtrack if something maybe is wrong. Sorry, I'm not moving enough. And apparently that turned off my lights. There we go. It's slowly coming on. And then our locator, which is for, viewing. This is for all of our field guys, right? So they're able to look at the map without editing it. And this is for anybody going in the field. They have a login they use to access the data, but not necessarily edit it. So I'm going to kind of show you what all of that looks like in our hub. So I have slides just in case we didn't have internet, but it's working well. I always have a backup plan. So let me pull this down and get to our hub. See if I have my hub. I just did police, of course. Let's go backwards a little. So this is what our hub looks like. This is where all of the fire guys go, whether they're an editor, a coordinator, a viewer, it doesn't matter. This is where they're going to access their maps. We have them spread out, locator, editor, coordinator, and then we have dashboards. This is kind of their central GIS place for fire. It's really cool that they can look at, let me see, I may ask you to log in really quick. Yeah. This is where one of the dashboards we've embedded so that they can see their status. I want to go to battalion 1. All my assigned awaiting coordinator is if it's already been edited. Fire station 1. So they've got 1, 2, 3 assignments right now, 1 for each shift. Click on it. You can go see, okay, this is the one they haven't got to it yet, but that's where we're at. So it's kind of gives them an overview, big picture. This is where we're at. If you want to drill down, you can. Of course, I mentioned we have the static maps. These are kind of those paper maps I showed you, just a little more up to date. We actually run these once a year. but they are expensive to print and they keep them in the trucks. So we only update them once a year, but they have always have access to this as long as they have internet. And luckily they've put FD technology for any IT questions instead of GIS. And then they come to us if it's something that's not user related. So that's just kind of our hub breakdown. So I'll show you the locator map. This is for viewing. Yeah, again, everything's logged in because it's protected information, because we don't want, you know, everybody in the city having access to gate codes or contact information, things like that. So this is symbolized a little differently than all of our other maps because it's symbolized by, you know, our max risk, our high risk, and our moderate standard risk buildings. So you can kind of zoom in, you can enter your address. You can see all of the layers we have going on. They collect a lot of data, but we've kind of broken it down by, you can see everything's in color in this area, but some of these are kind of grayed out. That means the data's been entered, but it's not been vetted by a coordinator, because we still want them to know there's information there. Just take it kind of with a grain of salt. Hey, this data has been entered. It may not have been approved yet, but it's there. So you'll see those are the same symbols, they're just gray. So you can see it gets really busy really quickly. You can see this has elevators, stairwell, all kinds of different access points. See all of our fire hydrants and information on those. And then on top of that, I'm trying to find a good example. I used to have them off the top. Yeah, we also have attachments. So in this case, it might be an old PDF. Yeah, that one's an old one. But some of them have attached videos. They've attached floor plans. We've got all kinds of really cool attachments that I think are super helpful in an emergency situation. They're slowly collecting more floor plans as they go. Sorry, I'm trying to find one that's not, yeah, I think these are all the older maps, but we do have some that have, they're slowly adding them. But you can see, you know, all different kinds of doors they've got. These, I think these are, yep, overhead doors to access, water, utility shutoffs, water shutoffs. So we have all this information that they're looking at in the field, and this is just the viewer mode, right? This is where they're just coming to look, you know, I've got to go to this address. I've got to call out to 6720 Parkwood Boulevard. A lot of times there's contact information filled out here that they would look at. Luckily, I picked one that didn't have any. And so that it's just a lot of information for them to have that's up to date, right? They're updating this in the field as we're speaking, and it's going to reflect on the map. So they're all seeing the same information. So that is our viewer. Let's go back, go to our editor. Again, you have a login, and the viewers do not have access to the editor, right? We have it all secured based on your username and password, what you have access to and what you don't. And then this is symbolized a little differently, and we can actually, I can kind of show you, we have it symbolized by what's not assigned based on my assignment process I kind of explained, assigned, delinquent, awaiting coordinator. And then we've even streamlined it so that we can do all the complex at one time. So instead of entering contact information for all these different buildings, when it's all the same, probably management company, we're going to only enter it once. And the script at the end of the day will update all these buildings with the same contact information. So that's why we kind of assign one complex at a time. It's just trying to streamline how much information they have to actually enter in the field to save them time. So that's how it's a little different because you can see everything's fully colored. There's no pending information. It's displayed differently. We collect building access, building equipment. We always put in parentheses the edit because we just want to make sure it's clear. This is an editable layer. You can edit it. If don't edit unless you're for sure you want to make a change. Fire suppression systems, hazardous materials, outdoor structures, special needs, utility shutoff. So we're abundance of information that can be collected. And then for our editors, we even have our little about window. It tells them how to use it. In the beginning, we actually did a video screen recording to show them how to use the app so they were better prepared when they started using it. But we just use the smart editor. A lot of us kind of know how to use this, but for those that didn't, we had a test data for a while that I would show them how they can just enter data, add data, and then what that looks like for them. But that is our editor environment. And then the coordinator looks very similar. It's just they're going through and finding, we actually have filters set up for them. So they can go in and look at what needs to be approved for that month, just so we're staying on top of our monthly assignments, making sure everything's getting reviewed and approved, and just a second set of eyes to make sure all of that looks good. Let's find ready to review. So you go through each different layer because each different layer has different fields that need reviewing. So we can't exactly combine them all fluently. So you can change so this one station, we were able to organize them at least. So here's station 7, or not organize them, alphabetize them. That one is ready for review. Yeah, that's correct. And then we also we've added batch editing. So they could go in and say, okay, I've looked at this, looks good, looks good. Oh, let me open up here. Let me close that because that's, and they can batch review it, right? Without, go away filter. See if I can just clear it. Remove this, okay. So they can go through, say, yep, that looks good, and just do it in bulk. And they can use the batch editor to select everything at one time and approve it that way. Woo, of course. And they're all selected and you can correct, ready to publish, yes. And that's just kind of how we have the process set up for our approvers. So that way they don't have to sit there and click on everything and hit approve every single point. So it's just kind of different widgets we've set up to help the fire department, help our battalion chiefs get this stuff approved and go from there. Let me see if there was a question that okay, making sure. So that's fire. And then since we showed this in Boise in October, we've actually expanded. Our police department got on board. So they found out that we are sharing building layouts. They need to set this timer differently. There we go. Maybe that'll fix it. So we have our police using it now. They're like, hey, y'all have building layouts. We actually had a situation here in Plano a while back where there was a potential active shooter at a college and they could not get access to the building layouts. We didn't have it in our ETRG and it was police on scene, not fire. So there was a whole lot of things. They were back to doing it differently, right? They were having to use paper maps. They were having to call dispatch, fire marshals, trying to get in touch with the college campus police department, security department to get those layouts. So the police was like, hey, we need this. So we've actually created the police their own program now, and they're accessing the same data. So the police can actually access the same building attachments that fire's accessing it. They're accessing it in just their own apps. Obviously, they all like their own branding. Police wants their own badges, all very typical for our fire versus police.
Kristina, if you're at a pausing point, Liz
Yep.
Parry asked, are you using Workflow Manager for this edit approval? Or is it just an attribute that is being edited to trigger the status from new to approved?
It is a Python, so the status from, hold on, let me read this. There's no workflow manager in place. It's just an attribute. And then at the end of the night, when we have a script run that clears those out once everything's been approved. So we've taken care of everything on the back end and scripting, but it is in the app itself. It's just a feature attribute update. Sorry, my words. Hopefully that helped, Liz.
And Kevin Knoll asked, is there any particular reason you chose this workflow instead of survey 1, 2, 3 or field maps?
So the data, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin. Our editors in the field are actually using field maps. It's just easier to show the desktop apps. So I'm glad you said that because I forgot to mention our field editors do use field maps to insert data, edit data. Our coordinators are just kind of the guys that sit in the office. So they wanted a desktop app to do this. And it's better for widgets and things like that to make sure. And then some guys, as much as we try and show them how to use stuff on their phones or iPads, they still want to write stuff on paper and then go back to their desktop and add it in the map. We know it's twice as much work, but that's what works for them. And so we gave them multiple options by giving them paper, field maps, and in-person maps, or in-person desktop maps, sorry. Yes, Tim, have you any struggle with this level of tech? We have had, we've had both sides actually. Some of our guys are just, they really like the way it works now and they don't want to change anything. But then we have a bunch of other guys that are just really on board and gung-ho, like they're doing buildings that haven't been assigned. They're going out and saying, hey, we just found this new building. Can you add it in so I can start adding elevators and gate codes and everything? So we've had a mix, but it's been really fun to watch the guys that have been really, guys and girls both, that really want to adopt this way. And even the guys who don't want to do it, they want the access to the data, right? They don't want to be the ones creating the data, but they want access to the data, and they're getting on board slowly, because some of the paper maps were looked at on the iPad anyways. So they're already using the iPad sometimes. So they might as well just open up the web browser and look at the locator map.
Kevin said, how have you helped, or how have you managed helping firefighters deal with these changes?
So that's kind of where we created the videos. We showed them how to use it. And then from there, because the fire department, maybe we're unique in Plano, where our fire department was the ones, this was their idea. How can we do this? How can we automate it? They were so on board with change that I think they were ready for it. But again, there are some that don't like change, but because the chiefs were the ones that came to us and were like, we need this, they have been pushing it, right? They've been encouraging it. And it's not something that IT or GIS is like, here, you have to use this. The fire guys are the ones saying, hey, we need to use this. I think because they bought into it, we're more susceptible to the change. I know there's still some that aren't, but they're getting there. And it's kind of boils back to what I was saying. The data is what they make it, right? If one station doesn't want to do this, okay, your data is not going to get updated and you're going to be lost when you're going in. And they're going to realize it the first time they're on the scene and they realize they have no information, where another station's completely bought in and they have all this data and all this information ahead of time when they go on a scene, on an incident. So it's kind of in their hands. If they don't want to adopt it, there's nothing anybody can do about it, right? They're not going to add their own data, but then they're going to suffer for it when they are on scene. So we've done the best we can. We've created videos for them to access. We've offered any support when somebody's like, hey, I'm just not getting it. We're like, okay, we're happy to come sit with you. We'll show you how to do it. I don't mind doing one-on-ones, and that's kind of what we've done. But our fire chiefs, they learned first. They were our guinea pigs. And so once they knew, they kind of passed on their knowledge as well. So it wasn't just on GIS to train, the fire chiefs were doing it themselves.
Excellent. Tim asked if this system is integrated or associated with building permits.
We do not pull in building permits at all. The addresses we actually pull from our land records, and I don't know what else building permits would have that we would need that we don't already have, other than data maybe that we don't have yet. But at this time, I don't think we really have a whole lot of building permit data in a location feature class or relationship that would be beneficial to the fire department. I know that's something the police has asked for, but we just haven't gotten there yet. This is kind of one of those ever-changing programs that we're trying to, as they request things, we're trying to respond, and we just haven't, that hasn't been at the top of the list yet.
That's the end of the questions for now, so carry on.
Thanks. Thank y'all, I appreciate that. So yeah, as I was saying, police has kind of taken this on as well. They're accessing, theirs looks a little different because they're not on an assignment system right now, but they do have access to, to the same attachments that fire does. Sorry, I like to go to our newer areas of Plano because that's where we have a lot more attachments normally. There we go. Okay, so let's see, like this one, you can see we have a whole layout of different shops and where they're at. So this is kind of the things they're looking for now, right? They want to see, okay, if you're a Trolux, I'm going to butcher that, crew, you know where to go because you're looking at this layout, right? It helps having that context in an attachment. So police and fire all have access to the same data now. And then on top of that, they've even added some of their own layers that they're slowly starting to edit. They haven't quite, this is brand new for police. So they've been very focused on getting floor plans added in. And eventually they're going to work on key fobs, which is, they all have key fobs to get in the front door of a building. So they want to know where those are located on how to do that, how to access that. So they've got key fob location. They want to know where residential cameras are. They also have residential floor plans. If they're collecting those, they want to see those because fire isn't worried about residential. They're only concerned about multifamily residential, which is apartment complexes and things like that, as well as police incidents. So this one is actually an interesting one we haven't had to activate yet. But they want to be able to, if they're on a scene and they're noticing things, they want to start editing data in here. So all the police officers have access to it. And then after a week, we'll have a script or something. After so many days, we'll have a script that clears out all that data. But they've really run with it. It's really exciting to see everybody kind of adopt it and see where they go with it. Police and fire have done it both now, and then potentially maybe animal control will buy in eventually. But right now it's our two big departments, but they're sharing data and we're very excited about that because there's always been this battle between fire and police and they're all in right now. So yeah, we're very, very excited that they're all sharing and getting along with the data, at least. So theirs looks a little different. They even have some tools for, we haven't had any incidents yet, but creating buffers around incidents. So we've got some really cool, they can always change their base map if they don't want to see the topo, and it's just too slow to load. So I'm not going to do that right now, but they have that option. Again, police has their own dashboard, or not dashboard, hub, where they all go centrally located, all their information. They have their locator, editor, and coordinator, which we haven't really had to use yet since they're not editing key fobs or though we had our first question about them today, so it's coming. It just hasn't quite started yet. They've been focused on the floor plans, like I said. And then of course they've got their static maps that police uses a little differently than fire. Their NPO beats, their police beats. And then these are kind of what those paper maps look like, because that's the apartment buildings. And then we've got nursing home and apartment buildings. And then of course, this is their contact, is again, they're contacting PD directly, and then PD kind of filters to us when they have questions. So that's our apps. Kind of my quick live demo, not so quick. This breaks down the different dashboards that we've got going on. I kind of showed you this one, and then actually I could show you the other one really quick if I'm still on the hub. There she is. This one is kind of a high level when our chiefs are like, okay, how well's the program doing? What's holding us up this month? Why aren't we getting things done, or how well are we doing? So we can look at, okay, this is how many current features of each layer we have. And we want to see, okay, what's ready for review? This is what's waiting on coordinators to review. So it's all been looked at, but the coordinators haven't done their part. So this kind of gives them a high level. Okay, that's fine. And then let's see, anything that's ready. Nope, of course. So nothing's been done today for the editors to review, or coordinators to review what the editors have done. So that's the overall big picture for them. They can, again, filter by their battalion, their station, their shift. And go from there. So that is our apps. Quick demo of that. The challenges we've kind of run into. The first, of course, is always getting the data into GIS, right? That is the long part of the process outside of scripting, getting that data digitized. It's all in old formats, and we have to start from scratch. And I think we were very lucky that we had the fire department's buy-in and a captain that was on light duty that had the time and energy and brain power to learn GIS. You know, that's not in their wheelhouse. Technology is not exactly their favorite suit sometimes. They'd rather be outside fighting fires. So we got lucky. He wanted to do that, and he added the data. And then I'm the third GIS analyst. I've got a fourth one I've been training on this project. So it was very hard to get it off the ground, originally going through 3 of us, because that's a massive script to understand the assignment process as well as the training process. But at the same time, every time a new GIS person starts, you know, they've got their own thoughts and ideas. And so they're like, well, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? And so sometimes the fire captains had to start from scratch with each new analyst, because they're like, well, we did it they have to explain themselves over, and we have to understand the process. And so that kind of slowed things down. That's why it took us several years to get off the ground. And then of course, we've got a lot of hands in the honeypot. We don't just have the fire chiefs, we've got the fire captains, we've got battalion chiefs, but we've also got the IT department saying what's possible, what's not possible. And we've got our own ideas of what the apps should look like. So and it's a very politically sensitive situation too, right? We need to figure out who has access to what data, who should have access to what data, who should be editing, things like that. So that it slows down the process when you have to go through the government system. And then trying to reconcile all of those thoughts, ideas into one overall goal and getting there together. And of course, like many of you kind of touched on too, is getting everybody on board. We still are working on that to this day, trying to get all the firefighters on board to editing and using this app. Some of them still use the paper. We sometimes go in to visit some of them because now we're all friends because we worked so long together. We're like, okay, we're over here for lunch. Let's just start asking people at their desks, hey, do you use this app and why not? Or if you do, if you don't, why? Like what's on the paper map that you're not getting on the other apps? So we still do random questions to figure out how we can improve, just because we're trying to get them all on board. And so where we're at now, we did create the training view for fire. This is actually a little outdated. Sorry about that. We are not in testing anymore. We've actually in production. They are using it. They've been on full assignments this whole year. Police is now using it. So, but we are continuing to evaluate upgrades. We want to, the police, you know, they're adding their key fobs and their residential floor plans. All of that is continuing to change and evolve the program as we move forward. So any other questions that we didn't get to that y'all may have had? And this is my contact if y'all think of anything later, or my fire captain is actually really, you know, this was kind of their brain baby for a while. They're happy to share with other fire departments why they did what they did and how, so that maybe your city may want to adapt the same or something similar.
Kristina, what would you change or do differently now that you've been through the process?
Honestly, I've gone through this stuff so many times. It's kind of evolved to the way I would have done it. The only thing I think some of the training could have been a little smoother. But I don't know how that would have looked any differently, just because there's 13 different stations and 3 different shifts. So that's 39 different audiences, right? I think the training was a little rough, but at the same time, I don't know how it would have gone any different, because there's so many different training sessions we would have had to done. But the overall process, the scripting, I knew scripting previously, but I wish I'd been a little stronger when I started. I think it would have made things more efficient. I think the script could have been more efficient, but at the same time, I did the best I could at the time. I think it could have been improved for sure, though.
Well, Kevin would like to know how he can set up a chat with your fire captain.
Just let me know and I'll get in touch with him. If you have like times or dates, he's super happy to do that. Oh my goodness, Kyle is his name, Kyle Baldia. He would talk your leg off about fire ETRG all day long. So just that's my email. So just shoot me an email with your contact information and any dates or times you're available, and I can forward it on, and he can get in touch with you.
And Tim would like to know, have you, the police department or fire department, collaborated with other agencies so far?
So we've actually had other agencies reach out, just like Kevin just did, and say, hey, we really want to chat about this, to kind of share and figure out how you did it and improve. But it kind of, when we're like, okay, give us dates and time, we get crickets. So it may be on their end too, just like our government system, things take time to make decisions and talk to all the different parties. But we've definitely encouraged people to reach out and let us know, because we're more than happy to do that. Kyle even talked about it at one of his big fire conferences. He's shared them. He's like, look at what we're doing. And he showed them GIS. And some of the fire guys had no idea what GIS was, but he's definitely spreading the word.
And this is a little bit of a more basic question, but you have a ton of point data there in symbology. Did you make that symbology, or did you download it?
So our fire guys, much hinted throughout, don't like change. So we had to take symbology that they somehow came up with in Adobe and make symbols. And so when I came on, luckily the symbols were already made. But then when they wanted to start customizing them to be gray for those that haven't been reviewed, I had to use Adobe Photoshop. So I got to brush up on my Photoshop skills. So that was fun. So we definitely didn't download those. We have all of those PNGs, I think is what I saved them as for better quality. But yeah, it's all custom symbols we had to make off of Adobe, because they wanted them to look as similar to the old paper maps as we could.
Now, Kevin said, I love this, working on a similar initiative for fire departments in the Caribbean, and I have learned a lot from you today.
Awesome.
Kevin, maybe if you invite Kristina to the Caribbean, that might help. Just saying.
Hey, you invite me out there, pay for it. I will do it for you. Don't worry.
And Tim says Frisco's doing cool things with their SAFER program.
I have SAFER program. Our ESRI rep actually told us about it. So it's really cool to see other cities do something similar and how they do it differently. And somebody else just told me about Grapevine doing something. So it's really neat to see how the cities do it.
Very cool. Does anybody else have any more questions? We still have a little time.
And Liz did add for anybody who is starting from scratch that, you know, ArcGIS does have some different options in a catalog with symbols. You don't have to make them from scratch. Our city was just picky. And so that's why we did it the way we did. But they have other options, so you don't have to have Photoshop skills.
Very good. Well, that was such an interesting presentation, Kristina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I really want to do a lot of things now when I get back to the office. I'm a little bit scared to talk to fire and police because I know they'll be all on board and I'm not sure I'll have enough time. But
like I said, Plano got lucky. I don't know if all fire departments and police departments like it, but they'll get there.
Very cool. And your contact details are there. So if anyone thinks of questions afterwards.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much.
That
was really fabulous. I'm going to post in the chat a link to the URISA webinar page. The next ESIG webinar is on the 17th of July. The easiest way to get that information is just to go to the webinars page.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yep, thanks, Mindy.
Thanks, Mindy.
Bye.